So I went down into a rabbit hole this weekend. There was a small business discussion on the tough things that they're dealing with today. Things like getting funding, borrowing money, managing inflation, handling cash flow, attracting and retaining customers. And probably the biggest one is how do you balance the daily operations with wearing multiple hats? If I was in a room with the folks that were on this thread and I was reading through it this weekend, here's what I'd share. A lack of funding. One of the prevailing challenges for small business owners is obtaining the necessary financing to start or expand their operations. Now, this can hinder their ability to hire employees, to enter new markets, or to invest in new equipment that gives them a competitive advantage. So what would I do? Well, first, I would ask them to think outside the box, beyond the traditional bank loans. I encourage them to consider crowdfunding and angel investors, venture capital. There's a bigger discussion about those two things that isn't going to be in this video. Those are sources, but they come with their own challenges. And peer-to-peer lending platforms. Now, I'll say this, that if you're watching this inside the United States, each city, town usually has a chamber of commerce, and they have resources to help small businesses. And it's likely they're going to have resources for the small business economic development in that town. Number two is I'd have them leverage local and federal grants and subsidies. Look for government grants and subsidies aimed at specifically supporting small businesses. These can be the much needed capital without the burden of repayment sometimes. SBA loans, probably the most common in these types of things, can be a little tricky to navigate, but if you take the time to go through it, the benefits are tremendous. The third point I'd make about this is you have to have a strong business plan. Before you can get any grant or private funding, you're going to need a solid business plan. It's like going to ask, give me money and trust me. I know what I'm going to do with it. They're not going to trust you, right? You got to show them a plan. Show them a plan of how you plan on making money, how you plan on spending money, and how you're going to acquire new business. Forecast out like 18 months. That'll give somebody a level of comfort that their money is going to go to good use and it's not just going to get thrown away. Inflation is very difficult today. We've all seen the price of eggs skyrocket, right? That's indicative of generally inflation right now. The cost to buy supplies and to hire outside firms and even paying your employees continues to rise. If today a dollar buys 90 cents worth of stuff, we're going to have to make some changes. You can't continue to lay out a dollar and get 90 cents back. So how are you going to keep up with the cost of inflation? The easiest one to go to is manage your costs, manage efficiencies, regularly review your operational costs. For small businesses, I suggest starting with the biggest record of our spending, which is our credit cards and our debit cards. Every month, you should get your statement. And I'm a fan of the old paper and highlighter. Print it out and go through it line by line and ask yourself this question. did this expense move me closer to or directly relate to revenue? Now, the whole point of that question is to take a really objective look at your spending. I am fairly confident when I say this because I'm looking at myself when I say this. We all have spending that, if you're not keeping an eye on it, gets out of hand. For me, it's subscriptions, software programs, learning platforms, you name it, right? I've got a ton of subscriptions, some of which I probably don't even use the software anymore. So what I should be doing, and what I would tell you to do, is to go through your statements and highlight those things that aren't leading directly to revenue. Having said this, it's most likely that you can't cut your way to profitability, at least in the long term. So the second thing I would say is look at value, adding value. Instead of just kind of blanketing a price increase, add value to your product or services. Improve customer service, create loyalty programs, or just add additional features that could justify a higher price. The best way that I know how to do this is through bundling. If you can be creative and you can get to a place where 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, in the eyes of the client it equals 2.1 or 2.2, you keep ahead of inflation while offering more value to your clients. Another thing you can do is look at dynamic pricing. What is dynamic pricing? Well, in the couple of views, and this, for this discussion, is relating more to those of you that are in business to business, B2B. Dynamic pricing really speaks to pricing that goes up and down based on current supply and demand. Think of how an airline or hotels typically operate. On spring break, when a lot of people are flying, prices go up, both on the airlines and destination hotels. It can work for some industries that have limited competition. However, it forces you to chase trends and, frankly, constantly confuse your customers. I can't think of anybody that I've talked to about flying in the last 5 years that hasn't just banged their head on the table. Why does it cost $600 to go to Florida this week? And 3 months ago, I could have taken my family to Disney for $600. Well, it's supply and demand. The routes are near full, so they're going to fill every seat at a premium price. Let's talk about cash flow for a second. Cash is king. And without a sufficient cash flow, your business is going to wither away. I believe every business should have an active cash flow plan. Now, it's most likely something pretty basic for you and your business. If you're the typical small business owner, I'm thinking of home services. And it may be something that you really only need to get into a couple times a year. But the value of actually being mindful of the cash flow extends way beyond the idea of, hey, I'm having to look at my cash flow a couple times a year. What do I mean? Effective cash flow management. Now, there are tools that you can manage your cash flow with. There are free tools, spreadsheets. The goal really with those tools is to help you see the problem before it actually becomes a problem. And trust me, you'll sleep better at night if you're able to do this. There's something called a cash gap. And when I say cash gap, I'm talking about something that can silently suck the life from your business. So, in simple terms, and again, this is a B2B example, your clients are buying something from you, and maybe you're not collecting payment for 30 or 45 days. I'm thinking back to my printing days when our clients' publishers sometimes had 90-day terms. The challenge is I have to pay for those supplies, using that printing example, now. I have to pay my employees now. And that gap between when I get paid and when I have to spend money, the bigger that gap, the bigger the hole. And that hole, think of it like a black hole, just sucking the profitability out of your business. I've worked with a client that felt really good about their profitability. In fact, they hired me because they couldn't understand why their business was ultimately losing money when yet on a job-by-job basis, they were very profitable. Well, one of the glaring issues was this cash gap. If you're not managing your cash flow, you'll get a false sense of everything's going well. Institute programs where you're able to extend the payment of expenses and or speed up the collection of payments that your clients get. So close that gap. I just can't stress this enough. Cash flow issues kill businesses. Now, the next thing is what's freshly on everyone's mind, and that's attracting and retaining customers. I tell small businesses the easiest way to attract and retain customers is serving the ones you have extremely well. They become extensions of your sales efforts. Existing clients turn into referrals and turn into testimonials, which drive new eyeballs and new excitement to your business. And before you know it, organically, your business is going to grow. One of the big pains that everyone that owns a business or has owned a business goes through, and that is, how do I have this business and have to wear so many hats? There is, at least in my opinion, there are periods of where you take pride in the fact that you own the business and by golly, you got to do everything, right? It's my business and by golly, I'm going to do everything. You start hiring people and you still have some control and some time and energy in those things that you hire those employees for. Maybe it's because you feel like they're not going to do it the exact way that you want it done. It's easy to say to yourself, I've got more time than resources. Translate that. I've got more time than I have cash or money. So I'll do X, Y, and Z because I have more time. I get it. And to be honest, I struggle with that every single day. As the owner, I want you to think about all the things that you do on a daily basis. Actually, take a week and write them down. Every day, everything you do. It's going to feel like a big pain in the ass, but you're going to learn so much. And then categorize those things that you found yourself doing. And then this is the magic question. Ask yourself, which of these things are revenue generating activities? Now, I'm going to give you a word of caution because I fell into this trap. You're going to find yourself justifying that doing this thing right here is allowing this other thing to happen, and that other thing generates revenue. So kind of by extension, this thing is important. I want you to be as objective as you can. As a rule of thumb, we all have this 80-20 principle at play in all the things we do, business, life, relationships. And that is 20% of the things that we actually do ultimately generate 80% of the results. So said differently, 80% of the stuff we do only moves the needle 20%. So by going through that weekly journaling of activities, categorizing, and then asking yourself that question, we're going to try and find out what is that 20% that moves the needle the most for you. And let's do two things. Let's try to do more of those things because we know that makes us money. And then let's get help for the 80%. There is so much to do starting and keeping a business growing. While I hope you find this video very helpful, truthfully, there are more things than we can talk about in this video. That seems to be getting kind of long, so I'm going to end here. If there are other things that you feel are keeping your business down, keeping you from getting more, I'd love to learn what those are. And I'd love to help you address those, put a plan in place to have better alignment and get better results. If you're interested, go to foresightcoach.com and connect with me. As always, to your success.